In a world where job roles are vanishing as fast as new threats emerge, one voice seems to cut through the static with clarity, with empathy, and even a godly take on what it means to stay sharp in security. Today on the pod, we're joined by the amazing Day Johnson. He's a detection engineer at Amazon and the man behind the cyber walks, lab setups, and newsletter, and all of the newbie to cyber sage navigating, covers it all. Day, you were formerly at Datadog, right? And now it seems like you're operating on the edge of what's possible in detection engineering and just making it look real good and effortless. Today, we're going to be peeling back the layers on what it really means in terms of how to evolve these detection strategies in a threat landscape that can't seem to sit still. So Day, with over 45,000 followers on LinkedIn and like 50,000, probably more on YouTube, lots more on Twitter. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a true milestone of us to have you on our Dispatch podcast. And I know that our community is going to really love this one. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, first and foremost, to get into it, how are you? How's your summer been? I know you had a really awesome trip lately. What's keeping you busy?
Well, I'm doing good. My summer's been great. It's been extra busy. I don't know, for whatever reason. Like summers are usually more busy than the fall or winter, but I don't mind it at all. But yeah, I've just been busy, getting work done, content, managing the community and all of that fun stuff. But it's been great so far.
Yeah, it is interesting that summer is more busy. I feel like our summers are very short-lived here in Chicago. So that really sucks if that's the case. And I did want to ask, I was listening to a podcast on the plane right here, and the Theo Von, do you listen to Theo Von?
No, I don't.
Good. Waste a lot of time. But he started off with one of his guests, with Mark Zuckerberg, actually, his guest, big guest. And he was like, just randomly, he's like, do you like coffee? And he went on this whole spiel on how Zuckerberg doesn't he doesn't drink coffee. He'll drink decaf just for show.
Yeah.
I guess so are you starting your day off with coffee?
I also do not drink.
You do
coffee.
not? You're okay. So maybe smart people are onto something.
Well, I do drink caffeinated drinks. I just can't do regular coffee. I actually start my day off with a Celsius, believe it or not. And
is it sponsored by Celsius?
I mean, I'd hope they would reach out, because I drink one virtually every single day. And then I usually that usually lasts me till around 2, 3. And then I have another drink that I drink. It's called New Tonic. It's more of a productivity drink. It just it has caffeine in it, but it has nootropics that kind of keep your brain primed for getting work done. So when I usually have that afternoon slump after work, I usually take it so I can at least get 3 more 4 hours of focused work done for the rest of the day. So I do drink caffeine, but not specifically coffee. Okay,
very nice. I might have to get on that. I don't typically drink energy drinks unless it's getting real late at the club and I really and I need to stay awake. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
but it seems like smart people are onto something with no more drinking coffee. That was a big trend coming out of Las Vegas and Black Hat and DEF CON this year. I noticed more and more people are becoming sober, and they are becoming. Yeah, exactly. This is great.
Yeah.
Definitely something one should at least try, or at least even for a small amount of time. It can't hurt.
Yeah, I've not drank alcohol in 2 years, and I plan to keep that streak. So I definitely recommend it.
My gosh, good. I'm gonna have to try that. Maybe for a summer. No, maybe for the winter, because there's nothing going on.
You know what this sounds like? This sounds like when you want to go on a diet and you're like, yeah, I'll start next week. You're right, you're at the restaurant and you're eating a lot of food. You're like, you know what? I'll start next week, and you just keep saying that.
Yeah. That's usually me with my. That's usually me with what was it? People usually don't drink in January or dry January.
Right.
And but then it's New Year's, and then my birthday's February 1st, and it's there's my friends always want to start celebrating a little bit beforehand. I'm like, no, I just can't do it.
That's correct. Because my birthday is actually February 25th, so we're kind of actually birthday mates.
Are you an Aquarius?
I do not know. I actually don't believe in star signs. I'm sorry. I know that's controversial. I'm sorry.
It's very controversial. I mean, right now, everyone that my girlfriends will not date a guy if they're a certain horoscope. So yeah.
more power to them.
I know. Okay, sorry.
No worries.
We backtracked, but great energy. But let's talk about the weird energy that's happening in the security job market right now. Like, I feel like in part, and I've seen so many LinkedIn and Reddit posts on people straight up quitting. They're like, I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's literally to the point where I'm never going to make back everything that I'm going to do now. And I'm just going to go and do something else.
Yeah.
The market is hiring and firing at the same time. It feels like one minute it's layoffs. The next minute it's like, oh, we're hiring 25 new engineers. And also you got to think about, are those job postings even true? Because I saw somebody rightfully call out McDonald's recently for having this ghost of a job post that was running for like at least 9-10 months. And all these people were coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, nobody's actually interviewing. No, I'm not getting a hold of anybody. And I was talking to Kyle from Netflix the other day, and he was saying like OpenAI is viciously stealing people away from companies. And it's like, there's so many people that want a job. Don't steal people that have jobs already, right? You've written about this all the time, about the paradox of the job market.
Yeah.
How are you seeing that? Like the reflective, in the trenches, it's got to be impacting the state of work of people.
Yeah. I want to first clarify that my opinions around this will be my personal opinion and my employer's opinion. But I think that like it's definitely a very interesting job market that we're in. I think one that I've not seen before, like in my half-decade career. I think there's obviously, I think social media, like obviously LinkedIn and other platforms, like amplify the worst things. So it's harder to keep, sort of an optimistic perspective, right? That's just the truth. But it's definitely, I think it's definitely a more difficult market. Like I think a lot of trends show that a lot of people are staying at their jobs. Like, a lot of people are making a lot of considerations before they even move positions, because it's like you have to factor all these different things. So I think there is some positivity there, but I think there's a lot of amplified negativity, right? And I usually like to focus on the positive personally, but I don't think it takes away from the fact that it's definitely a much harder job market. There's the requirements for what companies are looking for is, a lot of experience, a lot of skills that, might not really be attainable by more entry-level folks, right? And even for entry-level positions, it seems like employers are looking for a little bit more than entry level. So it's definitely, I think, a more interesting, a little bit harder job market than, what we've seen in the past. But I do think that it's not different from what I believe like history has shown over time, right? I think history has shown over time that there are going to be things that come in to the technology world and disrupt things, but people that are actually able to stay and grow and build their careers are the ones that can adapt. And I think it's an opportunity for us to learn how to adapt to this. And the people that know how to adapt to this sort of like disruptions are the ones who are eventually going to find some success. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Extremely well said. I do want to hone in on those skills, but you're right. Looking at the positive side of it, it does, for those that do have jobs, it does make one really grateful to have what they have, and it makes them want to keep doing a better job at it.
That's true.
Knowing how difficult it is for those that don't. And so the skills, I want to talk about that. And also just the death of the traditional sock feels super real. That's I feel like that's the way that every single like workshop or conference session started. Like the traditional sock is no more. What skills or like mindsets are gonna future-proof us so that we don't get automated out of a job?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. That's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
I think it's when you start talking about skills, with regards to this, you need to get a little bit meta for a second, right? And start like going an abstraction above like, Python or Kubernetes or cloud security or whatever, right? I think ultimately it's problem solving, right? Even before problem solving, I think the biggest skill now is going to be your ability to learn how to learn and learn how to learn fast, right? Because things are changing so fast. New technologies are coming, right? So you need to learn how to learn fast, and also know how to prioritize what to learn. Because now with all these different things that are coming out, it's very easy to get distracted. Like today you can be learning how to use this particular AI tool, like learn how MCPs work or how architecture works. And then from that to like diving deep into like machine learning. It's like, there's a lot of things to learn. What are you going to choose to learn? And how is that going to be applicable to your career, and actually help you grow in your current role, or go take on another role that helps you grow in your career? So learn how to learn fast, knowing the right thing to learn. And obviously, I think critical thinking and problem solving skills, I think that's like the bedrock, like the foundation of everything else. If you're able to kind of have a strong grasp over that, you're going to apply that to whatever it is you learn. And, it does help you out a lot. But if you don't have like those like meta skills I just mentioned, I think you're just going to find yourself kind of going around in circles and end up not being able to, like I said earlier on, like adapt, right? Because ultimately, like every environment is different, like every company is different, right? You can, like myself, you can get thrown from doing cloud, detection engineering to doing something entirely different at another company. So knowing how to learn, right, those things that you don't have, and kind of putting these like connecting the dots and the puzzle pieces together, I think is really what is going to help you, like, remain relevant, as everyone is saying, like the traditional stock is dying and all of these different things.
I love that. It's a mix of soft skill, intuition, critical thinking, problem solving, but I am worried about that skill not being as sharpened as it once was before, because these younger kids are literally passing school with GPT.
Yeah.
I didn't do GPT 10 years ago, and I kind of feel like proud about it, but the critical thinking is, I'm really concerned for that, especially as a lot of vendors are integrating their technologies like MCP to MCP, agent to agent communication, and building these systems that can reason for themselves.
Yeah.
What is left for the analyst to reason?
Yeah. Rightfully so. Like, it's rightfully so concerned. I think it's definitely one where you have to make a conscious effort to not experience that like AI brain rot. I think I was talking with a friend recently about it, and it's like now, like, it's a lot worse because you can have that social media brain rot plus the AI brain rot. So you have to really make a conscious effort. It's like it's your life. Like you're essentially like in control of it. So if you know that something is going to essentially like diminish your ability to think critically,
yeah,
I think like you have to like weigh the options of like, is it worth like getting this thing done faster, or maybe spending a little bit more time like kind of diving into the problem and trying to figure it out myself before I go, use AI or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And also, I think school system should be adapting too. Like if we know that they're going to be using these things, instead of just maybe AI brain rotting, dumping everything and trying to get, outputs, maybe make your prompts in a way that optimizes and understand how the AI works so that you can work better with it. Like it should, there's a better way of doing that.
Yeah.
Just trying to expect something.
I think OpenAI recently released a study mode that is not like, it's not as essentially like giving you the answers directly. So it kind of puts a little bit of pressure on you. So you can use the AI tools like, correctly in a way that doesn't like essentially like causes you to not really know what you're doing and just like, contributing to AI slop really. So yeah, I think it's a means to an end. You just gotta be effective with the tool.
Would you use AI or do you use an LLM to ask what threat you should focus on today? Because there's so many threats, yes, but like which ones, right? When you step into a new and brand new environment, a new company, right? A new industry even, you're inheriting a whole new threat profile.
Yeah.
And beyond just onboarding, right? It's an entirely new ecosystem of tools and stacks and geopolitics and quirks and even the tech stack, right? I guess do y'all use Slack or Teams? We use Slack here. The Google Calendar too, culture. There's a certain way of how people like to be, addressed, or there's a certain way to ask for a meeting at certain companies. Like sometimes you need to let them know on Slack. Sometimes you could in an email. Our company barely uses email. Like Slack is our main source of communication, and all of that really is going to change how threats can manifest.
Yeah.
We just released a rule on how a run DLL like 3.2 can open via a PDF via just a OneDrive synchronization, right? So detection is going to change, right? Depending on what you're using, but also what you're defending. So with it changing so much daily, how do you actually know what to focus on? And would you trust an LLM to tell you that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think context is key here, right? I think that like I'm finding that so much that when you're dealing with like LLMs or, these AI chatbots or whatever AI tooling, context is key, right? So usually what I've found is that if you just put it in a black box and you're just like, hey, solve this problem, right? It's going to give you an answer. Like the AI tools are incentivized to give you an answer, right? Whether you have context or not. So it's going to give you an answer. That answer might work, but within the context of what you're doing, right? Because you're in a black box, it might not fit into the context of that problem you're trying to solve. So I've found that the more context that you give the AI tool or the LLM, like the better it's able to actually apply, knowledge from that context to then give you the right solution to the problem. Now, another thing I've personally been exploring is like, I don't want the AI to like essentially like, I don't want the AI essentially like tell me what to do, right? So I usually start by saying like, hey, this is what I want to do, right? This is my approach, right? Help reason with me about this, or give me multiple options or alternatives for it, right? Because a lot of times like we usually just tend to like tell it what to do and essentially just take what it gives us.
First response.
Yeah, exactly. The first response. Right? It's like, well, at that point, you're essentially like outsourcing your reasoning to the LLM tool, right? So what I personally like to do is like, it's a partner for me, right? I'm like, hey, like this is what I'm thinking about. This is a problem. Give me an idea of how to solve it, or let's reason about it together. Like sometimes, like even personally, like when I have ChatGPT on my phone, I just like have like a back and forth conversation with it. I'm like, hey, like don't give me an answer, like ask me some questions, let me answer those questions for you, and then let's have this back and forth conversation about it. Now, obviously, when you're doing like stuff with like tooling, it's a little bit different, but I think the context is like a lot more important in this situation, because the more context you have, the more context the LLM tool or the AI tool has, the better it's actually able to help you solve the problem you're trying to solve.
And I think also that back and forth, it can be a very eye-opening thing. And a lot of learning can happen even during that time.
Very much so.
As well. Yeah. And no, I like that. I have been using LLMs a lot for getting documentation answers quick, but also in my personal life, just to help me emotionally regulate back from an issue. No, I don't need to be annoyed about that. I don't need to react about that. Like, or should I? Yeah.
I think there was a podcast recently where Sam Altman was talking about how the new update to GPT-5 actually like took away a lot of emotional support for people who had relied on it. So they actually had to roll it back, because a lot of people there's like an actual like Reddit thread about it where people were like, this new 5.0 is not really doing it for me. Like it's not the same as the one I used to talk to and like I used to interact with and I used to emotionally support me. So that's been a huge trend in AI tooling recently.
I refuse to use 5 still, because I have two very specific uses for the 3.0 model, because that's better at data analysis and helping me with reporting and numbers.
Yeah.
And then the 4 is just good for copywriting and just LinkedIn posts and just anything I need to write in long form. And I just don't want to change it right now. And I know that maybe there's new and better things, but no, and exactly. I use it as a therapist, but even then, with all the context in the world that you can give it, it still won't know these little things. It won't know the history of why you've done certain things at the company.
Yeah.
It won't, it's not drinking with your people at the Four Seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't understand why a rule was reverted because of so-and-so, because of some incident. It doesn't get it still.
Yeah.
And then throw in a bunch of the fuzziness too around it and hallucinations.
Yeah.
I've been seeing it hallucinate like crazy with, especially around like quotes. I try to go back to on all the podcasts and extract some quotes from just to talk about different things. And it literally tells me, it's like, well, this is what it should say. They should say,
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, but I want to look for what they're actually saying,
Yeah,
not what they should be saying, right?
yeah, yeah,
I don't know. All of that, it throws a lot of complexity into the mix, but how do you stay grounded when there's so much flux, there's so much to do, there's so much things that you need to be prioritizing? Like, how do you filter by is it by impact? Is it by like a
yeah,
gut feeling? Is it
yeah,
pressure? Is it
yeah,
both?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think like reeling it back to like security work, like prioritization. There's like this I forget what exactly it's called, but there's like this like prioritization matrix where there's like urgent and important, like urgent, not important, not urgent, but important, something like that. So I usually like to like it depends on the kind of work I'm doing, right? My day-to-day work might range from like writing a doc or to reading a doc or to like doing development work or hunting or doing like threat research, right? It's like there's so much I could be doing in a single day. But I usually try to prioritize on like what's the most important thing. And also I think just with regards to like knowing yourself, I would say like if you're a detection engineer, right, and you know that like you have to go through this like threat research report, right, in order to like look for indicators for like TTPs and stuff that you're gonna use to go like model a detection, right? And you know that the morning is not really the best time for you to really go read through reports because your brain is kind of slow. Then you could put that in the evening, right? Stuff like that. So just kind of like sort of like having this dual sort of prioritization matrix where I manage what's most important, right? If I need to get it done today, I need to get it done today. So like that's given, but also kind of understanding like how my brain works for like certain type of tasks, right? So if I'm doing just like some general like log analysis, like I'm trying to look through the logs, like hunt for something, right? Maybe like I'm doing a detection, but I need to like go like do some historical analysis like over a large scope, right? I'm not yet building the actual logic, but I'm just trying to understand like how does this behavior work at the larger scale. Like I might do that more in the morning or in the afternoon, right? And that might be important because this might be like a high priority detection or whatever the case may be. So kind of having this balance between like knowing what's important, right? What's important for the organization, for the business, but also like aligning that with like how best I work, right? Whether it's like in the morning, afternoon, evenings, or on specific days of the week as well, right? So it's a dual sort of methodology I personally use for prioritizing things because I feel like it's very easy to fall into this trap whether personally or like insecurity where like everything is important. If everything is really important, then nothing really is important. So having a very like brutal prioritization matrix helps me to stay grounded and prioritize what truly is truly important.
I love that. It's a little bit of, backlog. It's whatever that was on the news that day. And obviously your list of tasks. I was talking to somebody recently that they get a lot of pressure
Mm,
from their leadership from their leadership because they're head down into something, and that's how he likes to work is he likes to do like one thing at a time and not really multitask. And meanwhile I like to multitask. You saw my tabs yesterday. I had
yeah.
a million tabs open. I like to multitask and I'm just really good at it, but he's one of those people that needs to just do one thing at a task at a time because and he'll do it really really well. Stress because his leader will read something in the news that day and it's like, okay, everybody stop what they're doing. We need to figure this out right now. Like this TTP, like, are we covered? And he really needs to just move on and do whatever he says.
Yeah.
And so, and like that kind of pressure is pretty insane.
I think with that, like it's like that's definitely not I mean, it's like that's definitely not a I would say safe work environment, in a real sense of it, because I personally like I'm grateful for the fact that I have autonomy over certain things. So for the situation like that, right? Like a leader could be like, hey, like, top down, pressure, like this thing happened in the news, like we should go do this, right? But I also think like the people who are actually on the front lines who have the more like technical like business context should have autonomy over saying, hey, like yeah, it is important, like it affected the airline industry for example, right? But like we're in the retail space, like this doesn't really fit into our threat model. As a matter of fact, like we don't have we don't even have the telemetry like for this, or we don't have systems that could be compromised by this particular vector. Like we could put this on a watch list or something, but like obviously there are things that need to be like done like today, but whether it's like, something that applies to us, but I think the engineers themselves, right, the people who are actually on the front line should have some level of autonomy over saying, hey, like based off of our own organizational context, right, even though you see this breach or whatever the case is, or new attack vector, I think based off of our context, like it's not really applicable to us. And I think that's also important for prioritizing work, because if we're constantly just like essentially, like following the news, and trying to use everything that we find from there to essentially like build stuff for our environment, whether it's like detections or mitigative controls, whatever the case is, like, and it doesn't really fit into the context of our organization or our particular environment, then we're essentially like leaving the more important things, out to just dry. So I think there should be some autonomy with the actual like, individual contributors to push back if needed, or to even say like, hey, like this makes sense, but it doesn't really fit into, again, the context of what we do or our environment.
100%. It's autonomy, trust your people, but also we're back to context. Threat profiles aren't universal. And just because that was like the first thing you read today doesn't mean it's applicable to the organization, right? These threat groups are specific to a geo or a nation state, or maybe even an industry vertical, and they are top of mind, but everyone has to look at it very specifically to them. And I also do like, my mind is going to also the CrowdStrike and Microsoft are trying to also help bring a lot of order to the threat group namings too. They're kind of like OCSFing the naming conventions in a way, which is really nice. And it also can help, I guess, in this regard. But back to the context thing, I mean, security is completely contextual. Like what's true at a SaaS company is not going to be true if you're a potato chip making factory, right? So tell us a little bit about how folks can actually design detection in a way that reflects your organization's true risks and not someone else's, not what your CISO read on the news today.
Yeah, no, very much so. I think it starts from kind of like understanding, like, first and foremost, like I personally, the way I approach this is like, in the business itself, right? Like if you work at, I don't know, an e-commerce company, right? Like what's the business model, right? Like how does the business work? Now, I'm not saying like I'll learn about all the finances and all those different things. I'm just saying like what does your company do, right? They sell products online. All right, great. Okay, behind that is some technology that powers it, right? Whether it's cloud, whether it's like, containers, whether it's, SaaS applications, there's something that's powering the technology behind this, e-commerce platform. All right, cool. So now you have the business and you have the technology as well, right? So we as security kind of sit in between business and technology, right? We're like part of what a risk function, right, is like essentially communicates like risk, right, to the business, right? So like we constantly have to like sit in the middle of that, right? So I want to kind of like dispel like, usually the notion for detection engineers, like you just dive into the logs and like you just go build detections. I want to take a step back from that, right? Like understand like risk is super important, right? Now, obviously you should have like, coverage and consider those things, but I want to start from a perspective of risk, right? So when you understand like what your business does, you understand the technologies that power that, then you can then go into like, okay, what does your environment look like, right? Understanding like the assets you have, understanding like the way the systems work, right? Understanding how these different things connect with each other, what are the most important things, right? What are known attack vectors for your particular sector? What are known attack vectors for the technologies that you use, right? Have you had previous incidents, right? Sometimes like companies are just building out like brand new detection teams, right? But they might have had some breach in the past, right? So what happened there, right? You can go back into those past postmortems, right? Have you had like some red team assessments, right? And this is thinking from a perspective of like a new detection engineer at a new organization, right? You're essentially just getting a lay of the land, right? So you're building your own personal organizational context, right? I recently read the book The Staff Engineer's Path, and the first chapter talks about building like a topology map, right? There's like your
your attack surface.
What's that?
Your attack surface.
The attack surface, right? There's all these different aspects of the map that you you're kind of essentially like, whether you're physically or like logically like mapping that out, right? So once you have that, that's when you can start going into like prioritizing, detections based off of like, different things, right? Whether it's like systems that have like critical data, whether it's like based off of known previous breaches, whether it's based off of known vulnerabilities, whether it's based off of known risks, right? That might not have been exploited yet. It could be also leadership requirements, right? Sometimes leadership has like specific things that they're like, hey, we care specifically about website defacement, right? Because we're an e-commerce company, we have to make sure this is always online. So you essentially have a larger lay of the land, a larger understanding, a larger personal context that you can then use to start like prioritizing. Then you start going deeper into like, the more tactical stuff, right? So starting from strategy, then more tactical stuff, like understanding your log sources, understanding like what is normal, what is like deviating from normal, how do developers operate, right? And then you go deeper and deeper into that, then go into looking for, specific malicious activity, testing those things out, maybe through adversarial emulation or like sandboxes, and then going deeper into building out the logic of your detection. But I usually like to start from like a very like high level bird's eye view, and then you just start going slowly deeper and deeper down. And that's more from the perspective of like a new detection engineer on a new detection team in a brand new organization. Obviously for like an existing team, like there's going to be a lot more stuff that you're going to have to inherit and then build from there. But that's kind of how I would think about it.
Yeah. And also that got me thinking, and how really the coming of this role came about is because of the need to build custom detections for your organization. You can't just turn on these vendor provided detection maybe that come with your SIM. Maybe they'll get you half the way there, but you need a detection engineer that really understands the lay of the land, like you said, to really fine tune it back into the organization, operationalize it. That really was the birth of this role. And it's crazy to think that 10 years ago, nobody was hiring detection engineers. Maybe we were doing the work, but we weren't called that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about detection engineering in the new work order, because it's constantly changing. And it's now that we've introduced MCPs into the mix, and now that we bring our work home, right? And you probably are dealing with this a lot. You feel like your work and your influencer work is merging a lot too. Maybe you're on Discord, maybe you're using a lot of different systems that are kind of bridging both your job and your side gig here. And it came about because I've noticed that there's a lot more and more attack vectors happening through Discord environments. We're using social engineering techniques to try to, through mutual servers, start messaging somebody and maybe and like hooking them that way, and in this way the attack surface is getting a little bit more personal. So in this hyper connected world, right, where your work laptop might also be like where you're logging into Discord, how do you decide what's in scope for detection from an analyst perspective? Like how can we control if people are playing games on their computer, if people are on Discord in their computer, if people are on various like Slack channels, because you know how you can connect with different workspaces on Slack. And like our personal and work life is constantly merging. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that.
I mean, personally, I like to keep like both lives very, very different, very, very separate. Okay. Matter of fact.
So you have two separate laptops, turn that one off, turn your other one off.
Yeah, like I have two separate like workstations, right? So I have this desk that I use for like my own personal stuff. I no longer work from home, so I usually work in the office. So like it's like very, very different, right? I'm also like keeping like, systems different. Like personally, like don't even want to use like, my own personal tools or my own personal like social media platforms on my work, like computer, right? Just for personal reasons, right? So I think it starts from a personal responsibility thing. I think if you can actually like personally separate work from non-work stuff, I would go that approach. That's the approach I personally take. But we're humans, right? We're bound to sort of like mix these different things. I mean, they are slowly convergent, especially if you work remotely, right? So I think that's definitely like a part of like the attack surface, right?
Yeah.
Now, one could decide to approach it from that perspective of like where like personal like life is mixing with like more work stuff. But I think like again, like looking at it from a different layer of abstraction, right? Let's say someone is like, has a Discord on their work computer, right? And Discord is allowed by policy, right? Like that's totally fine, right? But ultimately, like someone tries to social engineer them, right? And then they click a link, it downloads a dropper, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe Discord is allowed, but at the point where a dropper is about to be downloaded or is about to start doing some malicious activity, your endpoint detection should be able to catch that, right? Like
That's
you could have browser policies that maybe like ensure like that doesn't happen, right? Maybe you're not allowed to like download certain things, right? So like there's layers of abstraction for that. You can start from like, okay, detections wise, maybe you might not have browser detections, but you might have preventive controls at the level of your browser, right? That even if they like they're logging into Discord from their browser and they maybe click some malicious link, it doesn't load up for them, right? And if it does, right, at the point at which like it gets to your endpoint, like you're detecting that, you're eradicating that, you're containing that host, right?
yeah.
Or if it starts to like exhibit some sort of malicious activity, maybe starts to try to beacon out, like you're detecting that at the network level. So I want to bring in like the concept of defense in depth here, right? Because we can't essentially like we can't like we want to always know everything that's possible, right? But we can have different layers of defenses, right? That go beyond just detections, right? And even at the detections level, I wrote a blog for detection dispatch, Thor dispatch, and it was about detection in depth, right? Where it's like you're looking at your detections from a multi-layered approach, right? You're not looking at it as just like I'm going to build cloud detections or I'm going to build endpoint detections. There's layers to like your organization's complexity. There's also layers to the people you're working that you're protecting, right? Their endpoints you're protecting. So taking a defensive approach, a detection approach that keeps that in mind, but also an overall defense approach that keeps that in mind. So we can't control what people would do, but we can essentially put controls in place, whether detective or preventive, to essentially mitigate the risk of actually like allowing that as a vector for attacks within our environments.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And then as these lines are getting blurry between dev, work, personal, I think that the defense in depth is the way to go here. Last question I have in this topic is, where do you get your inspiration when with this kind of content? Is like, are we still monitoring feeds on Twitter every single day? I know some people have like dedicated threat intelligence teams, and maybe that's what they do, and that kind of feeds your team. But where do you get your inspo of deciding what TTPs to focus on?
I think it's a mix of everything, really. Right? Like there's like different sources of it. Obviously, like there's threat intelligence that you can leverage as a sort of like intake. There's adversary emulation. So like if you have a actual offensive team that's like constantly like checking out like your like constantly like running attacks in your environment and emulating adversary activity, that's also like a source of that. There's also your response team as well. So like what is your response team dealing with? Like what are they finding? If they're responding to breaches, right, and or responding to specific alerts, and they find out that there's some detection misses there, that's a feedback loop for you as well. Your
Yeah.
threat hunting team, right? Sometimes like the detection and hunting team are kind of in the same sort of role, and expectations sometimes it's separate, right? So personally, like I work on a team that focuses more on hunting in my current role, so like that also feeds back into detections as well, right?
Mhm.
Risks as well, right? If you have like a actual like risk function, right, that's constantly like evaluating like the risks that come from like your applications or from your tools or from your SaaS platforms or your integrations or your third party vendors or your partnerships, right? Those are also intakes for like detections as well. And then obviously like there's things that your leadership cares about, right? Like what the business you're supporting, what do they care about, right? And that might come from your
Above.
yeah, exactly. That might come from your CISO, like from above, and like, hey, we need to focus on this because the business cares about this. And then also, I think like as security professionals, we have a sort of like unsaid, unexpected, like personal responsibility to kind of keep our ears to the ground, whether it's on Twitter or it's on LinkedIn or on Reddit or whatever feed that we have, to kind of understand what's going on in the cybersecurity world, so we can
Reddit is a
then
big source for me too.
absolutely. So we can just, use that as well. So I think is there are all these different sources. And then when you have all these things kind of coming together, like if you have a funnel, like all these things are coming in through that funnel, then you get to decide your prioritization matrix for what's the high priority detection, what's maybe medium or low priority detection. But I kind of see I kind of see I see like several sources as a sort of like intake function that you funnel, and then you decide what is the most important priority for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a similar team dynamic where we have detection engineers and threat hunters. It always scratches this itch in my brain whenever a threat hunt graduates into a role, like a detection engineering role. That's something about that day. It's like
Yeah.
the whole day is made.
Yeah.
But so what would you say are the 3 non-negotiables? It doesn't have to be technical. It could be non-technical things that are absolutely mandatory to be a detection engineer in 2025.
Wow. Non-negotiables. That's a great question.
Non-negotiable.
Okay. Like non-negotiable skills.
Yeah, I think you hit critical thinking was one. I think that's number one for me, especially
Yeah.
in this like GPT world.
Yeah. Well, we have critical thinking. I think second thing would be ownership. I think ownership is another one, right? Like ownership of problems, right? Ownership of the space you're in. Like, I think it's very easy for us to kind of get really like have a lot of tunnel vision on like just like this one thing that we're doing, which is, it's okay to like get fixated on what you're doing. But I think ownership kind of sometimes like expands beyond like what you're just kind of laser focused on, and allows you to like broaden your perspective. And I think ownership in the context, I think, and this is a bit of a like more on a personal note, but I really do like to take ownership of like wherever I'm working, like wherever I work at, right? Like I am especially if you're the publicly traded company, you have RSUs, you're a co-owner of that company. So like knowing that and like kind of taking that perspective as like, how do I actually work in a way that actually like supports the vision of this company? Like whether it's like making sure like we're secure by being in the right detections, right? Sure. I think ownership is going to be good, right? Whether you're at the company already or you're trying to get into a company, right? Especially with this current job market and the way the world is evolving career-wise, right? You really do want to enjoy where you're working. And I found that personally, like when I truly enjoy what I'm doing and where I'm working, it makes it so much easier to really like focus on the work and think of innovative ways to get things done.
Yeah.
So I'd say ownership is a huge one. And ownership, I believe, is, if I'm not mistaken, like one of the Amazon leadership principles, so kind of biased there. But a third one will be, I say continuous learning. Like that's just a cybersecurity thing, right? You always want to kind of stay on your toes, like make sure you're constantly learning new things. Like if you, like even if like, for example, like you observe a new TCP or attack vector like in a threat intel report, and it doesn't really apply to your company, you could still like spin up a lab environment and like test it out. How does it work? How did this threat actor use this ingenuine way to like bypass these differences, right? Like that sort of like curiosity, right? I think, matter of fact, like everything about cybersecurity and even more so detection engineering is like a curiosity thing. Like you're trying to like scratch this itch, right?
Yeah.
So I think curiosity keeps you, like motivated and keeps you like just learning new things and keeps your brain sharp from, AI brain rot. So,
it really does. It does.
Yeah.
One thing for me, as of lately, I just want you to like have an opinion on something. Can kind of be double-edged sword if you're like very stubborn about it. But no, but even then, even if one is stubborn about it, like just have an opinion on something.
Yes.
I've been if someone just says like, it's doesn't matter, but it's whatever. I'm like, no, like be strong, like strongly feel about something. It's okay to do that, and then like tell me why, and that's what I'm dealing with right now. But well, thank you so much for, I think that's all the questions for this episode. And I think overall, safe to say that if you are not evolving and recalibrating your security strategy with all of these different changes in risk and detection work order and the blurry lines between your work, personal dev, you're planning for a past that no longer exists. So it's so important to continue to keep learning, continue to understand, continue to keep growing yourself, and of course those around you. Day, thank you so much for joining us on Detection Dispatch. You're most welcome back anytime, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your summer.
Thanks for having me.
And I hope that we can meet in person someday.
Yeah. Definitely. Maybe at some conference.
Yeah. If you ever make it to one of them. Dave Johnson is available for speaking sessions, y'all. I'm kidding.